Welcome to Round Hill Radio. Through our conversations, we discover the holy and the ordinary, look for moments of grace and peace, and redefine what we're talking about when we talk about faith. Hey, Ed.
How you doing, Leslie?
Good. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Great. So we are in John this week. John 20. Sorry, I'm adjusting the microphone. That's the sound you hear. And verses 19 through 23. So here we go.
Okay.
When it was evening on that day, the first day of the week, and the doors were locked where the disciples were hiding in fear, then Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." After this, he showed them his hand and his side. Then the disciples rejoiced when they saw the Lord. Jesus said to them, "Again, peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, so I send you." When he had said this, he breathed on them and said to them, "Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive the sins of any, they are forgiven them. If you retain the sins of any, they are retained."
Okay.
There you go. So, context clues. After Jesus said, "Peace be with you," he showed them his hands and his side. So I'm assuming this is a post-Easter story.
Post-Easter story that we're telling in the middle of October.
Makes perfect sense. We are a resurrection people. What can I
Easter
say?
in October. We've done it before.
You know, weirder things have happened. It's always Christmas at my house.
Okay.
So, you know,
Yep.
pick one. So am I assuming also, because it says, then the disciples rejoiced when they saw the Lord. So they were like, who's this guy?
Right.
So he came in a different face or something, huh?
You know, so this is the gospel according to John's version of the resurrection. And when Jesus appears for the first time after his resurrection, which is to Mary Magdalene, she doesn't recognize him.
Right.
She thinks he's the gardener.
This is it. So what have you done with my Lord, right?
Right. So, by the way, I think that is such a fascinating moment to key in on, because in the movement from life through death to life, something has changed. And love a phrase that it was either Marcus Borg or John Dominic Crossan used, two great New Testament scholars, but they described this as saying he's the same Jesus and he's completely different.
Oh, wow.
And there's actually a scene in The Lord of the Rings where Gandalf, I know you're waiting for me to make that connection.
I am so happy right now. Keep going.
Big smiles.
I love where you're going.
And Gandalf has died, and when he returns, he's the same Gandalf, but he's completely different.
Gandalf the White.
Yes.
Yes.
And his memory is not quite the same. And there are times in the movie where he says, yes, yes, he vaguely remembers.
Yeah.
But he's passed through this experience. So Jesus has passed through this experience, and there's something different. So certainly Thomas, who's one of the disciples, is especially keen for Jesus to prove that he's Jesus, and that's not part of this story, but it's part of John's way of telling the resurrection story. So yes, he shows them, because that's interesting. He is the same Jesus. He's completely different. But one of the things that's the same is he bears the scars of the crucifixion, which is really, I find that very interesting, that of the fact that he passes through this, but it doesn't remove, what has happened. So there we are.
Yeah, that some things change and some things remained. And what remained seems important.
Right. It's his body, and it's not that, he can't be fully alive. He can be fully alive and he can have scars. And what is the line that Leonard Cohen has? Ring the bell that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. And I think that's what's happening here. We bear our various wounds and scars. Some are more visible than others. So come on ahead. Be who you are. don't leave that behind. And that's what happens here.
I love that. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Because I feel like sometimes, if I extrapolate a little bit, that through life, through aging, through various trauma or various just life experiences, we collect scars, right?
Yep.
We collect physical ones,
Mm-hmm.
we collect emotional ones, mental ones.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like sometimes we wish they weren't there.
Right.
I think that's a natural thing to wish, that you sort of, I look at my daughter and everything's so perfect.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, those were the days. and that maybe there's something about them that is important
Mm-hmm.
in what we collect through our lifetime.
Well, whatever, the fact that Jesus carries these scars, it doesn't prevent him from breathing on them. Right? So he still has this capacity, and this becomes the highest part of his point of his agenda with them, is to make sure that they get some breath into them. They're clearly flattened by what they've experienced.
Right.
They're hiding out. They're fearful. They don't want anything to happen to them like what happened to Jesus.
Right.
And so he has to kind of reinvigorate them, inflate them again. And so his first act to them is receive the Holy Spirit, he says. And it's interesting. If you forgive the sins of any, they're forgiven them. If you retain the sins of any, they're retained, which is really an amazing thing that he makes that leap. Like that's their first mission in life, is not to hold a grudge, not to be vengeful, not to be bitter. A lesson, I dare say, that would be so wonderful, so refreshing for us to embrace.
Yeah.
But here it is, right at the very cusp of this new age, as these disciples are going to be figuring out what they're going to do, what their first priorities are. It's to be people of forgiveness.
Yeah.
I absolutely love this. Now, by the way, having said all this,
Yeah.
the Gospel of John may have been written 80 years after Jesus died.
Wow.
So these stories were circulating around for a long time, were then picked up and basically drawn together in this extraordinary portrait of the four Gospels. John's often considered to be the literary artist of the four. They all have their gifts, but John's Gospel is composed in an especially artful way. And so here we are. It's 80 years down the road. And what is the first thing that people, or what are they remembering about Jesus? That he bore scars, he still breathed life into other people and said, forgive. Yeah. I think part of that is that by this time, there is an awful lot of animosity going on between infant Christian communities and synagogues, because it's not clear. People are trying to find their way. Do I need to be Jewish in order to be Christian? Does being Christian mean I shouldn't follow dietary laws? All of these, there's definitely tension going on, and that really shows up in John's gospel. And unfortunately, his gospel contains some very negative remarks about Jews and Judaism that have been used over the centuries against Jews, which is really, really unfortunate. Yeah. But in this passage, we get to see, I think, John describing how the movement gets some new life when it looked like it had the breath knocked out of it.
Well, and it's interesting too, because, it's like one of the first things he says is to forgive. And one of the last things he said before he died was to forgive. And it's almost like him being like, did you not hear me? Did I not make myself clear, guys?
Do we think we can get this message across?
Yeah. Do I need to shout at you?
Apparently so.
Apparently. Hit us over the head with a frying pan, please. We're a little thick.
I mean, and it's actually not hard to go on the internet and find stories of radical forgiveness. It really is not. Thankfully. among all the things that are, streaming through the internet, there are many extraordinarily beautiful and almost breathtaking stories about forgiveness. So we have the capacity.
It's in there.
It's there, and it's darn hard, and but that doesn't mean it's impossible. And so here's this extraordinary story. I think the other underlying thing here, Leslie, is that the disciples, towards the end of Jesus' life, they scattered.
Okay.
And Peter, denied him 3 times. That was not good.
Not good luck.
And, who among us would not most likely do the same thing to either save our skins or save our families' lives, whatever.
Sure.
And so here we are, Jesus is in a sense saying, I release you from that burden. I'm remembering an experience some years ago. I served a church that had these wonderful ongoing relationships with churches in Europe. And this very unusual international partnership had been going on for years. And like every 3 years, they would gather in the church of one of those partnership churches. And the year that I went, we went to a little place in the Czech Republic. And while we were there, we met people who had to make some very difficult decisions during the Cold War, during the Soviet rule, in order to save their families. Some people had given up names and given up information that turned out to be very damaging to other people. This, by the way, was in the city of Ostrava.
Okay.
And it was very, very difficult to sit there. We had an evening one night when people came together and talked about how they survived. And some people were very honest and forthcoming and said, look, I gave information. I gave up people. I lived with that my whole life. But, I was told that if I didn't do this, this is what was going to happen to my children. This was going to happen to my spouse, So who among us would know how we would act, in that moment? And so Jesus, it's as if he's saying, look, I get it. And I'm going to release you from that burden because if you continue to live under the weight of that cross, you'll never, ever go on to experience new life and kind of, forge a different path for yourself without all of that weight, all that guilt.
Do you think there was an expectation or an idea that, they had done these things that they regretted, that they would then, with that grace, make different choices next time? I mean, not that they had the exact same situation, but just thinking about.
I think that was the hope.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think for those of us sitting there, it did give us long pause to consider, wow, let's be very gracious here and very humble. I mean, this is not the place to be saying, why didn't they stand up for their congregations? It's just not that easy, and we want to say that it's always possible, that we can do it, that we may be called to stand up in that way. I think in right now we're living at a time like that. So I think this text has an interesting, this is not the kind of text that says, stand up for what's right.
Yeah.
This is the kind of text that says, you might sit down, when you should have stood up.
Okay.
But you know what? You don't have to sit down forever. And maybe you're going to get another chance at this. And yes, it may in fact be extremely costly. And I do think that people feel right now that speaking out in the public square about all kinds of things may get them in trouble in a variety of ways. And I think we're actually seeing how that's happened. Yeah. So this text has an interesting, this is not the rah-rah text.
Yeah.
This is more the text that says, going forward, be humble, and but be aware that forgiveness is there. That's always there. And we hope that as life turns around and gives us other chances, that we'll be able to use our resources in ways that really align with our values.
Yeah. I think there's something also very interesting about that forgiveness element, because I think in prioritizing forgiveness, I think we can approach speaking up in maybe a different way, and maybe a more compassionate way than we would if we kind of held like a energy.
Yep.
Last week's podcast, we were talking about David and Goliath, and Lillian suggested we might want to have compassion for Goliath. And I was like, how dare you? But it makes me think of that, like having some sort of like taking a moment for perspective, taking a moment for empathy, taking a moment for forgiveness as the initial step to then towards making, in this case of the story of John, making a different choice,
Yeah.
and standing up.
Can I say something about that, David and Goliath?
Sure.
I think that's a wonderful take. And in his book, Malcolm Gladwell, who's such a great writer, wrote a book on David and Goliath, and he gives this wonderful, very creative description of many of the problems that Goliath may have experienced, like a condition related that affected his eyesight because of his size.
Okay.
And this is why he actually couldn't see David very well.
Oh.
And that Goliath, because he had a sword bearer and he had tons of armor, his whole life was built on this expectation that, he was going to be able to be close enough, right, to fight the persons that he had to fight. So Frederick Buechner he was a wonderful writer, and he wrote a great little book where he gave thumbnail descriptions of all the biblical characters.
Okay.
And he marched off the map. He didn't just stick to the text. But interestingly enough, one of the things he said about Goliath is that Goliath had arrived at a point in his life where he was sick and tired of being trotted out by the Philistine leaders as the supreme bully.
Yeah.
And that, what Buechner was just trying to open up was the possibility that this guy was recruited because of his size when he was young, forced into a role that he never wanted to play. And Buechner says that when he died with a smile on his lips.
Oh, interesting.
Released at last from that burden.
Wow.
So,
from being typecast for so long.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
I think that takes a real imagination to think, It's not in the story.
No.
But why not?
Yeah.
I think the Jewish tradition is so great about taking these stories and saying, well, what if we just push it that way? Right? Or what if they had done I love the fact that, that within the Jewish tradition, there's so much freedom to do that. And so maybe there's a connection here with all of this.
I love that.
A place for the Goliaths of the world who feel like they've been just, forced into this role.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I think that it's just interesting. I was thinking, Leslie, about, we chose this story, or someone chose this story to be included in our...
Don't look at me.
I thought it was you, but I don't know. It could have been somebody else. I got to fess up. This is one of my favorite stories.
You say that all the time.
I know.
It's almost like you chose most of
times. What am I going to do when we don't do this series anymore?
Oh my gosh.
Am I still going to say this is one of my favorite stories?
My favorite.
But I think the reason it is specifically for this because of the power of the breath. And there's a story, because we've talked about Elijah in the past a few times, and there's also a story where Elijah stays with a woman and her son. He helps them through a very difficult time. There's a famine. He miraculously provides food. And then out of the blue, this young boy dies.
Yeah.
Right? And his mother says to Goliath, I may be doing that off and on today, says to Elijah, is this why you came here? Really, in the end, was it to punish me? And it's almost like does she think she's done something in the past that now she's going to have to pay for that? And he's trying to say, look, I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah.
But he takes the boy out of desperation, brings him up to his room, and then sort of stretches out on him and breathes into him. He also really confronts God, like, what in the world is going on here? Right. But then he breathes into this boy, his breath. And I think it's Ford Madox Brown is the artist who painted the scene of, after that happens, the boy revives, and Elijah has him in his arms, and he is bringing him down a staircase, and the mother is like, oh, thank God. And Elijah looks absolutely done. Like he has expended himself in a way that has just really brought him to his knees. But he's got enough energy in him to be bringing the boy back to his mom. And, I just think about this story too. And was there a sense in which Jesus is once again is still imparting something so essential to others, his own life breath and being, is he depleted like that out of this experience? It's not long after this that when Jesus exits, he exits.
Yeah.
So we don't get a sense of where that might lead. But anyway, I just think about the importance of the breath, the spirit, and how the word spirit means both. Well, it can mean wind, it can mean breath. It's something very natural, and yet there's something almost supernatural about it.
I love that. It's to bring it, down to toddler size. We've been teaching my toddler. Yeah, right. We've been teaching my toddler how to take deep breaths when she needs to calm down.
Great.
And I'll say on the side that there's nothing funnier than suggesting to a toddler that she takes some deep breaths to calm down. She goes, "I don't want to calm down." I'm like, I know you don't. But there's nothing cute than a little 3-year-old going,
Oh.
And you're just, but the point of this, bringing this up, is that it is borderline magical how much 3 deep breaths will take a toddler.
It's a gift.
From the most escalated back to baseline. It is wild.
It's a
to
gift.
Me.
The power of breathing. It's the most accessible tool we have to bring ourselves out of discomfort. And so often it's something we completely overlook.
It's amazing.
So it's a great gift you're giving her.
I mean, out of necessity at this point for our sanity.
I believe that necessity is the mother of breathing. So keep breathing.
Yeah. It's honestly, she's been teaching me to do it too, because I'll start to get a little irritated, and I'm like,
watch mom do this.
Yes,
now.
I'm going to practice now.
Yeah.
Sometimes when she doesn't want to, I'm like, well, I'm going to take some deep breaths, so you can join me if you'd like to, because I need them right now.
The student becomes the teacher.
Yes. It's very funny.
Love it.
Oh, the things. Kids say the funniest things. Isn't that what it is?
They do.
They do.
Yep.
We have explored. I will admit, I sat down to read the story, and I was like, what are we going to talk about on the podcast with this today? And this has been fascinating.
Here we are.
Thank you.
Covered a lot of ground.
Do you have a final thought for us today?
Breathe. Receive the breath. And feel the peace. Yeah.
He does say peace twice. Yeah. Well, thank you, Ed. And thank you all for joining us today on Round Hill Radio. Round Hill Radio is brought to you by the friends and members of Round Hill Community Church. For more information, please visit roundhillradio.org.
If you enjoyed this podcast, there are a few things that you can do that would make a big difference to us. Like the video, subscribe if you aren't, and click the notification bell and select all. Thank you.